What I always say is if you're in the middle of a transition, maybe you're a business owner pivoting from one specific area into another. So maybe you're in a professional services industry and now you're going into life coaching. I always get like, oh, but what, like, who do I talk to? Who's my ideal customer? You want to talk to the people you want to attract. I'm going to say that again. When you show up and you're visible, whether it's on social channels or other marketing channels, when you show up and you have a message, you want to speak to the people you want to attract. So, loud and clear for those of you in the back, if you're in the middle of the transition, that transition is from some kind of offline or corporate career and you're moving in the online space, stop posting, talking to your old coworkers, your buddies from college, or your mother-in-law, or whoever else is trying to support you on your journey. That's not your audience. So stop talking to them and think about visibility is talking to the people you want to attract. Well, hey, friend, welcome back to another episode of the Heather Staker Show. Today, we're digging into visibility. Specifically, what does that word visibility mean? I'm sure you've heard me talk about it. You've also probably heard a lot of other marketing coaches, business coaches talk about it. I remember the first time I heard it inside of a mastermind. I'm like, what does that even mean? We're going to dig into exactly what it means as an online business owner and why it's important to scaling your programs. What we're going to dig in today is we'll define it, right? We're going to demystify it so you know exactly what to do. We'll talk about where it fits in to your online business and whether or not it should actually be on your priority list. We'll also dive into why showing up is so difficult for so many people. And on that note, we'll talk about how personal you need to get when you show up as a personal brand. And lastly, exactly what you need to think about if you're just getting started. So all that and more on today's episode. Let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, well, we're going to jump right into it. When it comes to visibility, we've talked about this on the show a lot. So this is not going to be new. However, I know if you are here, you want to get more eyes on your offers. Like you and I both know this, that if you're listening to this show, you have something in this world that can help other people. And you know that it is up to you to be the advocate for that something, to shout loud and clear from the rooftops, to tell people about what it is you do so that you can help them. I know you know that visibility is important, but I would bet that it is a constant task on the back burner list. And I would bet you're similar to me that the reason why visibility is a bucket that keeps getting kicked down the road is because it's not really well defined on your to-do list. Maybe you have a couple things like, oh, I gotta pitch some podcasts, which check out the podcast pitching series for that. You might have like, oh, reach out to someone or book more stages, like not very helpful tasks on your list. Let's actually define what to do today and help you gain some traction with it. So to prepare for this episode, I did what we all do. I did some Googling. I'm like, I want to know what information's out there because if I were you getting started in the online space, which I was you years ago, I would want to know, like if a business coach told me, hey, Heather, you need to be more visible, which did happen in a mastermind I was in. I'm like, what the heck does that even mean? So let's just define it. Visibility, I think, is a really fluffy and fancy word that a lot of people in this online marketing space have hooked their claws into and have like created this as this like mega solution that y'all need, right? Visibility is marketing, y'all. So as defined by Marketing 91, they're a great marketing brand online. They define brand visibility as this: the frequency at which your existing and potential customers see your brand on social media, search results, and other marketing channels. The frequency at which your existing and potential customers see your brand, right? In all these places. So visibility is how much the people you work with and want to work with see you and your stuff. It's that simple. That's essentially marketing. People, I know I've made this joke. If you're a longtime listener to the show, you know I've gone off on that tangent before. That visibility is such a funny word, but it's common, so we use it. But I want to dive in a little bit deeper. So what are we talking about on quote unquote other marketing channels beyond? most online business owners equate online business to either YouTube or social media, like online. That's where we think we have to show up. And of course, those are some of those channels. But we also can think about other channels being what we talk about on the show: stages, speaking at events, virtual and in person, guest speaking inside other people's programs. I just did that yesterday. I guest spoke in Safira Rajan's Empire Mastermind, which was super fun, by the way. We also think of other channels can be like right now, we are on a marketing channel. Y'all, podcast is a really, really great way to do that. You see, like back in the day, like back in the day, marketing channels used to be simple things like billboards and magazines, and remember the yellow pages, and mailers and TV spots and radio spots. And I think, except for the yellow pages, all of those still exist. But for our types of businesses, information businesses where we're selling digital products and kind of like intangible style things like information products, we don't use those channels, right? We don't really use the physical type or mainstream type. We use more nuanced channels like podcasts, like stages, like social media. So being aware of that. But one thing I really want to call your attention to, that I want to make sure that is your red alert priority. It's very, very easy to get caught up, swept up in the idea of being in front of more people. I mean, it feels good when more people see your stuff and tell you how awesome you are, right? But the thing that we have to keep in mind is like, how do I want to phrase this? I don't want to say this in a mean way, but it's kind of a mean thing. Visibility can be very much a lust worthy. That would the word. It's like lust. We can lust after visibility. That's what it is. Like we're like, oh, it's so sexy, so lust worthy. We want to go after it because it feels good to have people tell you you're amazing, or to say, look at all this stuff I've been on. But what we have to be mindful of is the goal is not to be popular. The goal is to be profitable. I mean, at least I assume if you run a business, that is your goal. You would like to be profitable in your business. So what that means, visibility specifically, is getting in front of your ideal clients and your existing customers. It's your target audience and your existing audience. Now, you might be listening to the show and you might be in the middle of a pivot right now. Maybe you're moving from offline business or a professional career into the online space. And you might be thinking like, well, my existing audience is not my people. So who am I trying to go after? What I always say is if you're in the middle of a transition, maybe you're a business owner pivoting from one specific area into another. So maybe you're in a professional services industry and now you're going into life coaching. I always get like, oh, but who do I talk to? Who's my ideal customer? You want to talk to the people you want to attract. I'm going to say that again. When you show up and you're visible, whether it's on social channels or other marketing channels, when you show up and you have a message, you want to speak to the people you want to attract. So loud and clear for those of you in the back, if you're in the middle of the transition, that transition is from some kind of offline or corporate career and you're moving in the online space, stop posting, talking to your old coworkers, or your buddies from college, or your mother-in-law, or whoever else is trying to support you on your journey. That's not your audience. So stop talking to them and think about visibility is talking to the people you want to attract. Got it? Talking to the people you want to attract. So let's go into this. The big question is, does visibility make a big difference? The answer is a very clear duh, Heather. Like, why didn't we pose that question? We had to pose that question because that's the logical next step. But what I want you to think about is the question really is, does marketing work? And the answer is yes. If you get in front of people with the right message at the right time, visibility totally freaking works, y'all. Business is really simple. I taught this in the workshop I did yesterday in that mastermind I mentioned. I started by talking about how business flows. And I'm going to hit on this real quickly here because I think in online business especially, I think it can get really confusing around how this all works. It's like, here's build your list, do a launch, Now try a 3-part series. Now figure out a podcast. Ooh, what if you tried it this way? And it's always this convoluted, trying different techniques and strategies. Let's boil it down and be simple. Business is very simple. It is eyeballs on your business converted to leads, which means that they're actual people that have signed up to hear from you on your email list. And then they buy, like there's conversion. So it's called leads and conversions, or in marketing speak, people say traffic, leads, conversions, or TLC. And what we want to think is, okay, so if business flows in that really simple way, at my old company, when I was in consulting, we talked about that as flow and conversion in your business. The more flow that comes in and the better you are at converting, the more profitable you are and the more that you can grow. Simple, right? You need people coming in, you need many of those people to buy from you, and then take care of those people. Simple, right? So yes, visibility, i.e. getting on stages, podcasts, being seen on social, those things definitely can fuel the business. Because let's think logically, the bigger the number of people that see your stuff, theoretically, the bigger the number of people that'll buy your stuff. Now, the bottleneck that comes down to is the conversion, right? Of how many of those people that see your stuff actually buy your stuff. That's a story for another day, which, by the way, if you want to get better at conversion, be sure to check out the 3-part webinar series I did in the fall. If you head over to our new podcast page, thespeakerco.com/podcast, you can check out all the show notes from our most top popular episodes. And specifically, there's a search bar that you can do on our blog where you can search webinar and you can find all of those things around that. So if you want to learn more about conversion, that would be a great place to start. But I want you to think about this. One of the things that I love so much about this concept of what we see as visibility, and again, as visibility, I'm talking about speaking on stages, on podcasts, guest speaking, and even showing your face on social media. The advantage is this. You can build your business in a couple different ways, but I'm going to give you 2 different scenarios. Scenario number 1, you can build your business by posting on social and maybe doing ads, like posting ads on social media or Google or YouTube, whatever you use there. And you can use that strategy to test out your messaging. And that's a great strategy because over time, you can look at data to tell you what's performing well, what are people responding to. You can really tweak your messaging and that can work. And it takes some time to figure that out. And it most definitely takes money to make that happen, right? You have to have money behind so that your stuff can get in front of more people, but you can test it out in that way. But the other way to do it, which is the way that I've built my business and so many of my clients, is you can live test your message on real people in real time. And I know that kind of sounds super scrappy because it is, but instead of obsessing over getting the copyright and testing out all the landing pages, instead you can actually talk about your expertise like I'm doing right now, live in real time with real people and get live real time feedback. That to me is incredibly insightful and allows you to adapt to say, oh, when I said this, it really provoked a lot of weird, confused faces. But oh, when I talked about it this way, their hands shot up. They had really, like their eyes lit up. They had a lot of questions. Or one of my favorites is after I get done with the session, if there was one specific thing I always ask in the chat, what was the most powerful thing you took away from today? Or really, what did you grasp onto? And it never fails. There's always something that happens. I'm like, oh, when I teach new content, I'm like, oh, that was the thing they went wild about. Okay, I can do more of that. So it's that real-time feedback that can be so powerful. And to me, that is a huge advantage of visibility. So sure, yes, get in front of more people, but as a business owner, mastering your messaging, it's critical. It's absolutely critical for your success, and being on stages allows you to do that. So it's a win-win. You get in front of more people and you get to develop your message. Plus, in the process, you warm people up faster. So get this. I want you to think of these 2 scenarios in your day-to-day. How often in your day, I want you to just imagine for a moment, do you come across an ad on social media from, let's say, another business coach? So a coach in the online space. You're in the online space. I bet the ads are creep stalking you like crazy. Everybody's got a guide. Everybody's got a planner. Everybody's got the perfect solution. probably all the time, right? You scroll through your feed and you are bombarded by ads. I might be willing to bet that you go through phases, right, where you notice them a ton, and then other like phases where you tune them out and you don't even notice because they're so freaking mini and you're bored. Yeah, that happens to me too. I want you to think about, of those ads that you've seen maybe in the last few weeks, how many of them have you actually clicked on? How many of those ads for business coaches or other people in this online space, how many ads have you actually seen versus clicked on? And I'd be willing to bet the number is very, very low, unless you're actively right now trying to find ad examples that you want to kind of see to model off of. So if that's true, that's the exception, right? But chances are you scroll right through those ads, maybe even side eye them, and you're like, oh, I posted that picture. Oh, that's working. Or then you look and see, like, how many likes did that one get? How many comments did that get? You look at it more as like a social media information gathering as a fellow business owner, not really as a client. Yeah, okay. Maybe I'm just modeling my life. But I want you to think about that. Now, let's juxtapose that. It's a fancy word, juxtapose. Let's juxtapose that between, I want you to think about the last time, let's say you listen to a podcast, maybe it's this one, maybe you think of another podcast that you love and listen to religiously. I want you to think about the last time that that person had a guest on. Did you look and say, oh, they have a guest? No way. And scroll past? Probably not. You probably said, oh my gosh, they have Liz Wilcox on, or, oh my gosh, they have whoever. Shout out Liz. Hey, you're the first person that came to mind. I want you to think about, like, when there's a guest here, I'm pulling up my phone, just pretending here to pull up a podcast episode. Instantly you're like, oh, interesting. This person's on, and you listen. Yes. I would hope that happens with my show. You see that we have incredible guests on the show. In fact, coming up here in a couple of weeks, we're having the incredible speaking coach, Mike Ganino, coming on. Never had another speaking coach take the platform of my show before, and that's going to be super freaking good. Plug, I just did the interview the other day, and oh my gosh, we laughed so hard. It's mildly inappropriate and it's super entertaining. So there's a plug for that. But when you see your person, your podcast that you love, they bring on a guest, you listen. So let's think about the difference between that. Random person in your feed. Let's say, I'm going to use Liz Wilcox as an example, because I said that she's been on the show before. I've talked about her before. She's amazing. She's been a client inside my programs. She's got an awesome email marketing membership. Let's pretend Liz does not do Facebook ads, but let's pretend that you've never heard of her on the planet, and you go across Facebook and you randomly see an ad. I mean, Liz is a great writer, so you'd probably be caught in, by the way, but instantly it would be a stranger to you, and you'd think like, maybe you click off, maybe you wouldn't. But instead, if I were to post an episode here on the show that had Liz talk about how to create raving fans or lazy launch in your business, you'd be like, ooh, what's that? Which, by the way, we have that episode on the show. So you can go back and listen to Liz talk about the lazy launch strategy. I think that was about 1.5 years ago, but oh, it's so good. Anyways, you hear my point. When somebody else introduces someone to you, someone you trust introduces someone to you, you listen. Right? It's a primed audience. You're way more likely to engage with that person to listen. And if it's a podcast or even a live stream, just that association of seeing them together, you instantly listen. But then you have whatever time frame there, right? So on a podcast, that could be an hour or so. Maybe it's 20 minutes, maybe an hour. If you're on the big podcasts, like crazy ones that go 2 hours, maybe that. But you're in that person's ear. You're starting to get to know them, and it skyrockets that like, know, and trust factor, building your credibility and rapport with them. They're warmed up. Now, think about this. This is a very random metaphor here that we're going to go outside of business, but I really want to drive this point home for you. I want you to imagine that you are at your in-laws' house for dinner, or your significant other's family's house or friend's house, maybe even your parents' house. And your mother-in-law, your mom, or your dad, or whoever is the food pusher in your family says, hey, do you want something to eat? And you say, no, I'm good. And then the food pusher, in this case, it's my mother-in-law. She's a great cook, and she always wants everyone to have food on their lap, in their mouth. Maybe she gets the bowl of pasta and then sets it down in front of you after you said, no, I'm not hungry. But as soon as that bowl of cheesy, aromatic carbonara is set in front of you, you suddenly suddenly you're starving and you can't pass it up because it looks so freaking good. Yes, that is the difference between a cold person being introduced to you. It's like passive up, I'm not interested. You easily dismiss the solution. But when someone is placed in front of you and it's out of convenience, right? Because it's a show you already listen to or a person you already pay attention to, we're quick to react to convenience. We'll give our attention. But then once we have the attention, we are elated and we become super interested when someone exceeds our expectations. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. When you listen to somebody else as a guest on a podcast or again on a stage, I would bet that you listen with a level of slight skepticism from the get go. And they have just a few seconds, maybe a few minutes, where you are forming your opinion of whether or not you think they're legit or whether or not you like them, whether or not you want to listen. The truth is that people do that to you when you step on a stage, and you can use that to your advantage. But this brings us up to the big point around, okay, why does visibility feel so freaking hard? Why do so many people struggle with it? And it's exactly for what I was just saying. We know we form judgments, whether we're conscious of them or not. We instantly have first impressions of people, and we are evaluating and measuring them up, down, left, right, sideways, in all directions. It's a 360 judgment, man. And even if you're like, I totally don't judge people, we all do it. We do it unknowingly. So, because of that, of course, we are freaked out at the thought of putting ourselves out there in a big way because we know we cannot control what other people think of us, yet we still want to. We know all the quotes where people say, no other people's opinion is none of your business, or we know we shouldn't care. But we have this inner knowing that other people are judging us. And I get it. So it is freaky. So even if you're like, I'm totally cool being out there, I know deep down you have something in there going like, oh, there's something weird about it. And maybe you're living in that discomfort and you've gotten used to it. I've gotten used to it, but I still have times where I'm like, oof, oof, this is hard and isn't comfortable, especially as you elevate yourself to bigger stages, to more exposure, to audiences that are way cold. Notice that point I just said there, to audiences that are way cold. We can take more risks when we are in our circle, or maybe we're playing on stages or places that are near to our home base. But the farther we expand our wings and we branch off to newer audiences that don't know us or know any kind of whispering of us, that feels scarier because we don't have the reputation to carry us forward to hopefully curb that negative judgment if it's there. I get it. It can be scary, this visibility thing. I totally get that. When I started my business, I was totally comfortable speaking on stages. I've been speaking on stages around the world for years. I mean, quite literally a decade or more, 15 years. It had been a hot minute. And I was totally comfortable in front of the audience. That wasn't always the case. I was a super, super freaking shy kid. Whenever I talk about things that are personal and emotional, my whole skin would go blotchy. I would also cry anytime I had any kind of feelings. I was real cute, y'all, but I worked my butt off to get really comfortable with public speaking. But when I started my business, I assumed that, okay, like, cool, whatever, like it's virtual, but I'm going to be speaking on person. I was going to go pro with speaking. And then I started doing video, and I had a complete freaking identity crisis. Because the moment I turned on a camera, I developed a word flub, brain to mouth malfunction, and the words would not come out. And the hard part was I would sound intelligent, right? I sound good. The words stringing together made like kind of pseudo made sense, but the scramble in my brain was just a freaking hot train mess dumpster fire. Like it was terrible. And what would happen is the moment I would go live, I would get the courage to do it, but my brain would scramble. And I was constantly just going, man, I'm just like ass backwards in everything that I'm saying. This isn't making sense. I missed this. What am I doing with my hands? What's going on with my eyebrow? And I was all up in my head because I was terrified of what I'm about to tell you. I had worked my tail off to become an expert, to become amazing on a stage, to have phenomenal stage presence. I was poised, I was polished, but I was funny, I was personal. I developed this entire reputation around it, and I was damn good. And people paid me a lot of money to be on stage, but to also help them on stage. And then I got in front of a camera and I had the expectation to be just as freaking good, to showcase that level of experience and quality and expertise. But when a microphone was placed in front of me and it was a camera, it was video, live or not, I did not. It did not compute. It was terrible. Oh my gosh, it was so good. You should go back and listen to. Well, first, if you go back and watch the very beginnings of my YouTube channel, you can giggle with me. Also, even if you listen to the first few episodes, I mean, probably the first 100 episodes of the podcast, you'll hear an evolution of me not only getting comfortable, but you will hear me bringing more of the true me. And I don't say that as in I'd never been inauthentic, but I had started more polished, more poised, more closed off. And that's me being totally honest with you. As the evolution of building my brand, I have gotten more real and more present. So that brings up the big question around when it comes to visibility. One of the areas that people struggle with is if they show their true self, their weird self, their imperfect self, their quirky self, their work in progress self, it opens them up to potentially more negative judgment. And here's the truth. When other people see you, when other people experience your content, when they listen to you, for the most part, I think people are good. Yes, there are a lot of asshats on the internet. A lot of people, especially in Facebook comments, that like to make a lot of random ass comments about really dumb things. But I would argue that the majority of people are good. And they are not actively sitting there going, I hope you suck ass. Like, I hope you're terrible. I hope you fall on your face. Like, that is not the norm. And even for those of us, I'm going to put myself in this category, that are highly skeptical of people. I'm not trusting of pretty much anyone, right? I'm skeptical, right? Of like, does this person legit have experience? Are they really going to help me? Do they know what they're talking about? Like, did they really do that? Those numbers seem like BS. Like, I am skeptical, but I'm easily persuaded once I see that someone is honest, is real, and is of service and help to others. So for me, a high skeptic, I easily relay or hold trust with others who demonstrate competency, confidence, and humility. So what I want to ask of you is to take a leap of faith and say others are good. Others will not purposely throw you under the bus. They're not purposely going to be like, you're terrible. And if they come for you in the comments, right, just freaking block them. Don't worry about it. But I want you to have this assumption that people are good when you show up in a real way. Where things go wrong are when people try to show up in a facade of perfection. Because you and I both know that perfect does not exist. And we actually hate it when people try to pretend perfect. We actually secretly root for them to fail because we do not trust them. Our trust skyrockets when people show their realness. So if you're struggling with this showing up thing, you also might be grappling with the thought of how much of me do I have to show, especially if you're like many of us and you're building personal brands online. And let me just give you a gift here. You go to where you're comfortable. You do not need to show the inner workings of your life. You don't have to show your breakfast smoothie. You don't have to talk about your kid's tantrum. You don't have to talk about your breakdown that you had in college. You don't have to share your life story. What you do have to do is choose what moments and experiences and feelings you're going to pull people in on. A good rule of thumb is figure out what your audience is feeling, what you want them to feel, where they're at, and then think about times in your life where you've had similar thoughts and feelings. That's what I'd start with sharing. Share the realness from that. Share the realness of a time where you felt that way. If you teach something now because of something you went through, well, that is a story that you probably want to tell. But I'm going to really encourage you to think about this. Tell the real story. Don't tell the glamorous version of it. Tell the real story, because we do our audience a disservice when we try to glam up our stories because their stories, the real stories that they know exist, the ones that they're living with, they know that they're real, they're raw, they're messy, and they're not glamorous. So when you give a picture of smoothness or easiness or look, and then it all tied up in a bow, people are like, we know that's not real. Or they go, I'm broken. That's not my journey. So, what I want you to think about is if you're struggling when it comes to visibility of how much do you show, you do not have to share your life. You do not have to share every personal thing. What you do want to what you do want to do, that was really intelligent. Here we go. But I want you to think about how you can share connections with people. So if you struggle with coming up with stories, head over to the episode where I teach you how to actually come up with a bank of stories to share in your content. You can share these on Instagram stories, on Facebook Lives, on podcast interviews, in your content when you teach, in your digital courses, wherever it is that you show up and you teach, you should have some stories or some metaphors baked in. That's a great way to be able to show yourself. But I'm going to tell you this. If you're just showing up, sharing your expertise, sharing what you know, sharing tips and strategies, that visibility that you're after, you're not going to be seen. You're going to be in the lineup with all the other things. You might get eyeballs, but you know how when you're in the middle of doing something, you're multitasking, and I don't know, a bear on a skateboard can go right by you and you don't even notice it because you're not paying attention. When you talk about generic things, when you keep posting generic quotes, when you're talking about the same stuff that everybody's talking about, and there's no unique perspective or spin on it, you could be a bear on a motherfucking skateboard rolling on by with the perfect solution, but they're not going to notice. So the thing that I want to leave you with, in order for you to get noticed, in order for you to become magnetic with what you teach, to be that go-to person for someone, you have to stand for something. And that doesn't mean you have to have like this big political stand or this big civil rights stand. Like, you don't have to have this big, powerful life message. It could be just your opinion on online marketing. It could be your opinion around I was working with a client this morning. There's a right way. She's a needlepoint cross stitch educator. And she was talking about, I dug into a few things with her and I wanted to figure out what she was fiery passionate about. But there's a right way to stitch if you want your creations to turn out at high quality and hang on the wall flat. I did not know that. I found that out this morning. There's like a very specific kind of stitch you do. And there's like a bunch of mistakes that people can make that they don't know they're making. And it was just very fascinating. But for her, she had a stance around there's a right way to do this. And she wanted to work with people who wanted to higher quality with their stitches. So shout out to you. Ellen. Anyways, I wanted to bring that up is you have to be able to talk about things that you're passionate about. You have to be able to talk about why you're making the recommendations. And that could be how you give people a peek into your story. Because at the end of the day, if you want to be visible in your business, if you're not visible with a message that actually gets people to pay attention to you and be like, make them think of you when that topic comes up, well, then I would say visibility would be a big fat waste of time if you're not doing that. But the good news is you're here on the show. You've been working with me for weeks, or maybe you're new to the show and you're getting ready for a little old Heather Sager binge. Welcome, because that's what we do around here. But we want to make sure that we're focused on taking the right actions for you and your brand and your business. But most importantly, when you show up, you have to show up. It has to be an authentic version of you with a message that's actually going to resonate. So where do you start? This is my challenge for you. I want to introduce you a concept I came up with this afternoon. This is how a lot of my brilliance happens. It falls out of my head and I make it a thing and then it becomes a thing. And here we are. I want to give you a challenge. I'm going to give you an acronym, and the acronym is OR, O-R-E. Now, ore actually is I did a Google on this because it's a naturally occurring solid material from which a metal or valuable mineral can be profitably extracted. And you're like, where are you going with this? Ore stands in my new thing here, the ore. I want you to have an ore every single day. That sounded weird. We're going to have to come up with a better way to say that. But one risk every day. That's my challenge to you. One risk every day. This is my OR challenge. Now, let me go back to that definition: a naturally occurring solid material from which a metal or valuable mineral can be profitably extracted. In my opinion, by taking risks every single day, one little risk every single day to share a little bit more of you, sending that DM on Instagram, sending that pitch, sharing stories on Instagram, putting your face on Instagram stories, recording your first reel or your 12th reel or getting back onto reels, reaching out to that podcast host, giving a content compliment. That's a weird one, right? But reaching out to someone to tell them how much you appreciate what they've put out there, taking time to comment on someone's content versus just hit the heart button or scroll past. Start showing up in the way that you want your audience to show up for you, but one risk every day. Or I want you to focus on this every single day when it comes to your visibility and showing up as the kind of brand you want to be. You need to start taking risks. And that means, it doesn't mean like do crazy things, right? But it means doing something that scares you, that gives you a little bit of those heart flutters every single day. They're going, oh, this is going to make me uncomfortable. And that's the point. One risk every day. I want you to focus on putting yourself out there every single day in your business. It's because taking those risks every day is the thing that's going to help you make progress. It's going to help you stand out. It's going to help you get noticed. And most importantly, it's going to help you grow. Because I don't know about you, but I would like my content to be better a year from now than it is right now. I want my videos to be better. I want my podcast episodes to be better, maybe a little less rambly. I don't know. Maybe you like that. I want the quality of my blog to be better. I want my bank account to be bigger. I want to grow. And I think you do too. And the only way we're going to do that is if we continue taking risks. It doesn't mean we have to go big swinging for the fences, although my anthem for the year has been go full ass, not half ass, full ass. That's my anthem. But I think it really comes down to the one tiny move that we can make every single day. And that's what I want to leave you with, is what's one risk you can take today that'll move you forward in your visibility. Start there and then step back up to bat again tomorrow. All right, friend, I hope that you enjoyed this episode all around visibility. That's given you a new perspective. It's given you a renewed excitement for showing up as the face and voice for your brand. I can't wait to see what you do with this episode. Be sure to take a screenshot, share it, and tag me at the Heather Sager and my new company at The Speaker Co. If you missed last week's announcement, scroll back one episode. We're going to dig into exactly what's going on in my business. Yep, we launched a new business. Next week, I'm going to be joined by my new co-founder, Emily Hall, and we're going to give you the real story and talk about what's to come for The Speaker Co. We'll see you again next week. Bye, friend.